First Credit Union Hotline is the California at Berkeley football sideline reporter, Todd McKim. Todd, welcome to BYU Sports Nation.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Good talking to you.
ESPN's Football Power Index has Cal at number 27 right now with a projected record of 8-4. Is that the expectation in Berkeley as well?
I don't know what the expectations are for Cal football these days. And that they've been all over the map in the last decade. I think optimistic. I think on an optimistic standpoint, I think 8 wins would be high. There are a lot of people that aren't convinced yet that Cal has the talent level and competing in a difficult conference like the Pac-12 conference, and especially in the North Division of that conference, that they can compete with the big boys. And the big boys, I'm talking about Washington right now. You know, Stanford, I think over the last 6 or 7 years, you'd have to put in that category. I think Oregon will be resurgent this year, and then throw in USC. I think those are considered the big boys in the conference. And they play all of those teams each and every year. So to get to 8 wins, you'd have to sweep the non-conference. And then, you lose those 4, and then you pick up a couple other wins, and maybe you get to 8. I think most Cal fans would be ecstatic with 7 in the regular season and going to a bowl game. I think anything less than 7, and it would be a little disappointing. Last year, 5-7, and lost 3 games down the stretch by 3 points apiece, all winnable games. Could have very easily have been an 8-win team last year. So I think 8 is probably the over and under. Anything above 8 or 8 and above would be outstanding. Anything below that, I think there'd be a little bit of disappointment.
Todd, BYU and Cal September 8th in Provo at LaVell Edwards Stadium, part of our post-spring football previews of BYU's opponents. Cal has been good for a long time, like you talked about. The Pac-12 is brutal. In fact, it eats itself, and sometimes Washington doesn't get into the playoff like last year. What do you expect from Cal in terms of the first 2 games? Because there's North Carolina in the opener, and then at home, and then at BYU.
Yeah, I think they're critical games. Last year, the Bears got off to a terrific start under first-year coach Justin Wilcox. Shocked North Carolina back in North Carolina in an early game, started at noon back there, 9 a.m. Pacific time. Kind of shocked everybody by winning that game back there, and got off to a good start by winning the 3 non-conference games. I just think in this conference, you need to win your non-conference games. And those first 2 games, quite frankly, are toss-up games in my estimation. Anytime you play North Carolina, they got good talent. They walked on the field last year and went, how are the Bears going to win this game? Now, North Carolina suffered an inordinate amount of injuries last year. I think they lost 17 starters at one point in time during their year. So they didn't have the kind of year they wanted. They hope to bounce back. And anytime I've been to Provo with teams, anytime you go to Provo, it's tough to win there. So I think those first 2 games are critical. Then the Bears play Idaho State, a bye before starting the conference against Oregon. So in this conference, you had better win your non-conference games if you want to be a contender and go to a bowl game.
Todd McKim, Cal football sideline reporter with us on BYU Sports Nation. What's the perception around Berkeley and Cal of a team like BYU after they had an historically bad 4-9 season?
Yeah, I think most people don't believe that's going to happen again. BYU, I think I read an article a couple of weeks ago that BYU's got like 18 games over the course of the next 5 years against teams from the Pac-12 conference. So BYU, in the course of the next 5 years, is going to have a lot of say as to how Pac-12 teams are going to fare vis-a-vis bowl games and maybe even runs of national championships because of so many games played between BYU and the Pac-12 conference. BYU came in here a couple of years ago and, quite frankly, manhandled the Bears and cost them a bowl game. So, I think anytime you play BYU, expect to play a good football team, a physical football team. And I think Coach Satake has proven over time, he's been a great defensive coach wherever he's been, that they will bounce back. They'll have a much better year this year than they did last year.
That's certainly the hope for both sides of this matchup coming up on September 8th. Tell us a little bit about Justin Wilcox. It was his first year last year, defense coordinator, great resume. What's the expectation in year 2 for Wilcox and this group?
Well, again, I think they need to go to a bowl game. I think 5-7 last year, and he has admitted not what they wanted. Now, they were much more competitive last year than they had been in the previous years under Coach Sonny Dykes. Certainly defensively, they improved by 14 points a game defensively. Now, they weren't as good offensively. They weren't the hurry-up offense as the air raid kind of offenses can be under Coach Dice. So I think this year you need to take the next step. It's year number 2. He's got a few more of his guys, so to speak. And again, I think anything less than a bowl game would probably be disappointing.
Sophomore quarterback Ross Bowers threw for over 3,000 yards, 18 touchdowns, 12 picks. Is he the starting quarterback, or do Chase Garbers, Brandon McElwain, and Chase Forrest get a shot this year?
They all got their shots during the spring ball, and I think it was pretty obvious to most of us that watched the spring ball that Ross Bowers had improved. He had inconsistencies last year. He made some mistakes in critical games down the stretch. Stanford, UCLA come to mind. But he's worked really hard in the offseason to become a better quarterback, not only physically but mentally as well. So anytime you started 12 games, you've got an advantage over everybody else in that you've played and you've been in the fire, so you know what to expect. So I would imagine he's going to be the starting quarterback against North Carolina. I don't think that's set in stone right now. I think there'll be a little bit of a battle maybe in the first week or 10 days of fall camp. But I would certainly expect at this point in time Ross Bowers to be the starting quarterback when the Bears visit Provo.
Todd, who else are the playmakers that BYU fans should be aware of?
Running back by the name of Patrick Lair had a terrific season last year. Came out of nowhere. He was a walk-on from San Luis Obispo area. Nobody knew much about him other than he was a great student. And he started the year as either the third or the fourth running back. But after about 3 or 4 weeks, we lost Trey Watson to an injury. He has since transferred to Texas as a grad transfer. Vic Nweri had some great games for California, but he was a big, slower but more powerful back. And Patrick Laird came in, and he kind of lit everybody on fire. He had a great game against Weber State, 191 yards, and then ended up with over 1,100 yards for the season. He's not overly fast. He's not overly big. He has some good quickness, tremendous vision, very smart, hard worker. So he's going to be the workhorse, so to speak. He didn't play much in the spring. They didn't need to see much from him. But I think Patrick Laird at running back, and then they really hope to get a kid by the name of Demetrius Robertson, who was a 5-star blue-chip recruit out of Georgia, turned down to Alabama to come to Cal. He missed almost all of last season with a lower body injury. He's got elite speed, can stretch a defense. They need him to be healthy to stretch the defenses. And if he is the player they think he can be, they got a couple of really good weapons offensively.
Todd McKim, Cal football sideline reporter, prominent voice of Cal Athletics on BYU Sports Nation. Great stuff. We appreciate the time, Todd.
Anytime, guys. We look forward to seeing you in September.